So we all know that MAGA's rhetoric has been very cruel and hateful over the years, and I think a lot of us have just sort of become numb to it. We just expect it. We know that they're out to own the libs, and we know that Donald Trump empowers them to be who they truly are. It's one thing to see them be cruel and mean, but it's a totally different thing for me to sit back and watch them dig into the Bible and find verses to justify their behavior. That to me is even worse. And what's even worse than that is what Marjorie Taylor Greene is saying here. Folks, I can't even begin to wrap my mind around this. You guys try your best. Take a look.
On his shoulder.
I believe it. I believe we all witnessed a miracle, literally. From, before it happened, the flag above got blown in the wind and it got tied into literally what looked like an angel. Did you see that video?
I didn't see it.
Oh my gosh, you guys have to find that. It was truly, it was like an angel coming down, and it was the American flag tied. They had to bring it down, and all the people in the stands helped unravel it, and it was literally before he came out on the stage.
What in the hell did we just watch? I knew she was out there. I knew she was crazy. I knew she had her whole Jewish space lasers thing. But folks, that's a whole new level of crazy. And it just goes to show that you can honestly see whatever you want to see, and you can read whatever you want to read into something if you look deep enough. My grandfather taught me that years ago. It was like, you may believe something, it may be true to you, but just because you see something in something or you read something into it does not necessarily mean that it's true for everybody. But I have saw so many far-right people and so many radical right Christians posting some of the most absurd stuff since the Trump assassination attempt. And one thing I've been seeing a lot of is they're sharing Ephesians 6, verse 11, which apparently the guns was fired at 6:11. So someone went to Ephesians 6:11, and it says, put on the whole armor of God that you will be able to stand up against the devil. They think that applies to Trump. But I could just as easily make the same argument and use Genesis chapter 6, verse 11, because it says, now the earth was corrupt, and in God's sight it was full of violence. So couldn't I make the argument, I want to say firsthand I do not believe this, but couldn't I make the argument that God looked down on MAGA and he saw all of their violence and he just sent some kid to do his will? Couldn't I make the argument that God sent the kid if I wanted to? Couldn't I twist it that way? I'm just saying I could. And if I did, I guarantee you MAGA would say I'm insane, and there's probably people listening to this right now going, Brando, that's nuts, that's insane. It's no different than you digging into Ephesians and twisting it to say what it is you want to say. But it's not just Ephesians they're twisting here. They're twisting Leviticus chapter 8, verse 22, where Moses killed a ram and then he put some blood on Aaron's ear. And if you remember, Mike Johnson originally thought he was Aaron, and then the Lord spoke to him and said he was Moses. So I'm sure if Mike Johnson has caught wind of this, he's probably on a whole other planet right now. And they're also pointing out Leviticus chapter 14, verse 28, which says, and the priest shall put some of the oil that is in his hand on the lobe of the right ear of the one who is to be cleansed. So now they're trying to twist this that because Donald Trump took a wound to the ear that he's been cleansed. Again, I could do the same thing, folks. I could dig into the Bible and I could pull out Revelations chapter 13, verse 3, when it talks about the beast rising up out of the sea, the beast that everyone's supposed to be so afraid of, the beast that's going to trick Christians into believing that he was really for them. Revelations chapter 13, verse 3 says, and I saw one of the heads as it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast. I could point to that and say, you guys are all wondering after this beast. And I feel like I would be a little bit more accurate, to be honest with you. But it just goes to show that you can literally take the Bible and you can make it say anything. You can see a flag blowing in the wind and you can make it say whatever you want to. That does not mean it to be true. And it just reminds me of a story back when I was growing up. I went to church one Sunday, and the preacher just delivered this over-the-top hellfire and brimstone right out of Revelations. He was probably reading from that very spot I just did. He was talking about how in the last days the beast was going to rise up and how they were going to, persecute Christians. And man, he had me scared to death. I mean, he had the whole room worked into an absolute frenzy. And when church was over, I went home and my grandfather was there. And I went to my grandmother's house. My grandfather was there. And he didn't go to church all the time. He drank a whole lot. He was a World War II veteran, and I never really saw him sober, to be honest with you. And so he was sitting on the side of his bed, and I walked in, and I was like, hey, Pap, I was like, I just got done with church, and I heard the scariest shit of my life, And I proceeded to tell him what that the preacher had said. And he said to me, he said, you know what, if I was you, I wouldn't worry about it. I'd just live my life and go on and not worry a thing about it. I said, really? He said, yeah. He said, because they've been saying the world was going to end since the world began. He said, the Apostle Paul was preaching the end of the world back then. They were all preaching the end of the world then, even in the Bible. He's like, and I went to World War II. He said, while I was over there, I started reading the Bible, and I started reading about the mark of the beast and the number 666 and the mark in the head and the hand. And he said, I began looking at Adolf Hitler, and it sure looked like he could be it because he was murdering all the Jews. He said, so it definitely looked like he could be it. And he said, I actually convinced myself at one point that Hitler was the Antichrist. And he said, then I survived that war and I came home. Then my brother went to Korea, and I dug into my Bible and started reading, and I found verses that applied to him being in Korea. But then that war ended and he came home. He said, then some of my nephews got sent to Vietnam, and I was opening up my Bible and I was finding verses that applied to that. And, he said, then they came home. Some of them didn't, but the war ended and it was over. He said, then I saw Charles Manson carving X's in his foreheads and convincing his followers to go out and murder people. I saw Jim Jones convince his flock to kill all these people. And he said, now, here we are in the Desert Storm War, and I guarantee you if I opened up the Bible right now, I could point to a verse of Scripture that would make Saddam Hussein the beast. He said, so you can make it believe whatever you want to believe, and it doesn't mean it's true, and it doesn't make you any smarter than anyone else. Just live your life. He said, keep yourself right with God. That was his words to me. Keep yourself right with God and just go on and live your life and enjoy it. And he was a grandfather who never pushed fear on me. He was one that never tried to scare me. He was the grandpa that was cool. He was the grandpa that you wanted to be around, the grandpa that would sit and play his guitar, play his banjo, show you all kinds of cool things, teach you how to do all kinds of cool things. He was that guy. And he had been through hell on earth in World War II, but he came home with an attitude of, you know what, I'm here till I'm not anymore. And he lived a good life. He made it to 78 years old. And I never really saw him angry. I never really saw him upset. And for the life of me, even though he was a lifelong Republican, I cannot imagine him buying into this hateful and cruel rhetoric. And I cannot imagine him being happy that Hulk Hogan made an appearance at the RNC. I don't see that. There's no way that dude would have ever been for this type of cruelty and this type of hate. But the thing about it is, the whole point of this video was to say that just because they're out there seeing stuff in flags, and just because they're out there, twisting the Bible to suit their agenda, I could twist it right back at them. And we definitely could twist it right back at him using Donald Trump, considering that the New Testament is filled with warnings about false prophets who's going to appear to be on your side. I mean, we have way more verses. If we want to start cherry picking and twisting it, we have way more verses than they do to use against them. And yeah, folks, I did kind of wear this shirt on purpose, for those of you that get the joke.